Welcome, friends. Before our talk on Theosophical Symbolism, the square number 4, there'll be a short reading from chapter 9 of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is speaking. All this universe is pervaded by me and my invisible form. All things exist in me, but I do not exist in them. Nor are all things in me. Behold this my divine mystery. Myself causing things to exist, supporting them all, but dwelling not in them. Understand that all things are in me, even as the mighty air which passes everywhere is in space, O son of Kunti. At the end of the Kalpa, all things return unto my nature. And then again, at the beginning of another Kalpa, I cause them to evolve again. Taking control of my own nature, I emanate again and again this whole assemblage of beings, without their will, by the power of the material essence. These acts do not bind me, O conqueror of wealth, because I am as one who sitteth indifferent, uninterested in those works. By reason of my supervision, nature produceth the animate and inanimate universe. It is through this cause, O son of Kunti, that the universe revolveth. And now, if everyone could please mute their microphones, we'll begin with the talk on the square and number 4.
Well, good morning, friends. And today, as it was mentioned, we'll be talking on square and number 4. And don't ask me why it's square and number 4 and not a triangle. Probably this message had to be delivered today. This was unintentional, but we're skipping ahead of the triangle and going straight to square 4. And you're probably wondering, what is there to be said about a square? It's just a square. What meaning does it hold theosophically, and what type of esoteric meaning is put into it, and why it's so significant for us? So I would like to ask in the beginning, what associations you have with square? Does it hold any meaning or any type of associations, feelings? What does it bring to you?
Stability. Like strength.
Strength, okay. Josh, we can't hear you. We couldn't hear you.
Josh, I think your microphone's, yeah.
No. Okay.
Put it in the chat, I guess.
Okay. And then, anything with number 4?
How about now?
Yes.
Sorry. I was just saying that squares seem somewhat unnatural, like they don't appear in nature typically.
Interesting. Okay. So this is how a square is being explained vis-a-vis other symbols that we studied. So we already studied the point, the number 1, and the line that was number 2. My apologies, but we'll return to the triangle that is very important symbol next month. And now we have the square. And actually, I'm going to put square here. So esoterically, square lives in entire different space than this 3. So in the description of Plato, in the Platonian philosophy, the dot, the line, and the triangle would belong to the noumenal world or spiritual world. They represent laws and the causes. So the dot was, if you recall, the omnipresent principle and all that exists. The line was emanation into the physical world, and the triangle will come back to. But this is noumenal world where laws and causes are originated and they govern the rest of the existence. Now, square sits in a physical world. It is not in noumenal world. It is not about the laws and causation. It is really a stability, and it is the physicality of our world. So it is our world. It is us in this incarnation, in this physical body. It is our society. It's our politics. So square is a completely physical realm. Now, what is interesting that we probably spend 90% of our time discussing noumenal world. And the physical is considered to be of a lesser importance. Now, you also probably can relate to the quaternary nature of man. There is a square and there is the higher self, there is a triangle. HPB writes that the reflection in the mirror is not reality, but a reflection of the real. And the way she talks about the physical world as a reflection of the reality of the noumenal. So noumenal establishes the causes and laws and projects these causes on the physical world, and our reality is a mirror of all of that. Now, if we assume that reflection, like also in the Plato's cave, the reflections are not real, but they are reflections, they are shadows of the real people. So we tend to, in the esoteric tradition, we tend to think that this is the reality, and now spirituality is a reflection of that reality. In esoteric tradition, we understand that there is other noumenal reality, and our physical world is a reflection of that reality, but it's still a reflection of the real. So we cannot say that the physical world is completely not real and does not exist, as it was believed in many Christian traditions, that the physical world really does not exist. What matters is when you start living in heaven. No, the physical world is a reflection of the noumenal reality and the laws and causes, and these laws and causes shape physical world, and sometimes we just don't have a clear lens like our computer camera today to see it clearly. So that's the challenge with the physical world. But the square is a symbol of the physical world. It is basically a cube or square is a realm of manifestation, and it's not the laws and causes themselves. Now, we can look at it as our physical world and society and political structures, or we can also look at it from a more idealistic perspective and go into the concepts of the so-called utopia on Earth, creating utopian societies. There were many utopianists that were talking about how to structure our physical world, that it becomes a better place. There is also a notion of New Jerusalem, and we'll come back at the end of the talk. So there is a New Jerusalem, this new physical reality that we can build in the physical world. And there's also the kingdom of heaven that is on earth. So physical is not all what we have now in imperfections that we don't enjoy, but it's really this aspiration to create the New Jerusalem, the kingdom of heaven, or the utopian society here in the physical world that is governed by the laws and causations of the noumenal world and is not distorted in the way we see it now. Now, one of the interesting symbologies of this is the Masonic one. And I will draw the picture where you will see this very clearly. So the basic premise of the Brother Masons was that we are building here on Earth a more perfected society. So being a Master Mason was to basically be an aspiration of a more ideal man that is building, constructing like a Mason, and a more perfect society on Earth. And what they have on their aprons, if you look closely, the lambskin aprons that they wear, there is a square. And there is a triangle in the square. So this is the apron that you would see on the Masons. So the symbol represents in Masonry that they are in the physical reality. They are here in this, on this earth, in this society, in the political structure, but their physical reality, their square of four corners, is governed by the triangle of spiritual laws. So this is basically a very similar representation of our higher self guiding the quaternary self of the lower self. So this is the triangle embedded in the square. So it is the noumenal world and its laws and causations embedded into the physical world in Earth or other universes. So that's the Masonic sign. Now, the other place where we see number 4 and the square, and square is basically number 4. It's the 4 corners, and it represents number 4. So it's basically identical symbol. The other place where we see number 4 and square appear in multiple places is in the book of Ezekiel and Apocalypse. In Apocalypse, you will see the beasts that have 4 wings. They will have 4 faces. They will have 4 sides. And there are 4 beasts that come from the sea. I will quote verbatim. 4 great beasts come up from the sea. The first one like a lion, second like a bear, and another like a leopard, which had 4 wings and 4 heads, and 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly. That's from Daniel 7. So again, why do they have number 4 and basically represented by this square? One of the explanations, because again, the physical world considered to be a reflection of noumenal reality, but it's not a perfect reflection. It is distorted in our own understandings. So therefore, in the Apocalypse, when this physical world comes to the end, when we come back to the dust that we spoke of, it is basically will collapse on its 4 corners with the 4 beasts of our physical reality. So it's represented through basically a collapse of physical reality. That's what Apocalypse and Ezekiel and Daniel are talking about through number 4 and having the 4 beasts and everything. It's basically the end of physical world. And the same appears in the book of Revelations, and that's Revelations 4, 6, 7. In the midst of the throne and about the throne, there were 4 beasts full of eyes before and behind. So there is a throne. We don't know what throne is being referred to, but most likely the throne is a symbol of the noumenal world, of the triangle, and of the world of causes and of causations and laws. And that noumenal world is surrounded by the 4 beasts. It's basically grounded in the reality of the square and the number 4. And they are full of eyes before and behind. So they are experiencing this physical reality. I will read more quotes from the Bible. That's quite interesting that this number is so predominant in it. This is from this is the direct from Revelation, the full one. All around about the throne were 4 beasts full of eyes before and behind, and the first beast was like a lion, second like a calf, and the third beast had a face of man, and the 4th beast was like a flying eagle. So very, very similar references in different books. So this is the from Masons to the biblical representation of the square number 4. And we know as in Christianity, the physical world is frowned on as it was highly imperfect. And again, it was the heavenly kingdom that was to be strived for. Now we'll look at other symbology of number 4 and the square. What is interesting to see that most of the physical world is defined through these 2 symbols. So we see that in astrology, there is also division on 4 quarters. There is the quarter of Taurus, of Leo, of Scorpio, and of Aquarius. Also, when you look at the HPB and what she says in the Secret Doctrine about 4 angels or 4 rulers. So she's referring to 4 regions. She calls them regions, rulers of 4 corners of the earth: north, south, east, and west. They also, in some places, called 4 great angels or devas. And in the Eastern tradition, we also can see them being referred to as lords of karma. So basically here, she's referring to the 4 rulers, the 4 regions, for 4 corners of the earth. And this is basically the 4 regions that are applying the causal laws of the noumenal world in the physical world. They are the ones connecting the triangle and the dot with the square, with the physicality, and basically observing and recording and accounting the laws of karma to all who are living. It is also number 4 is also a number that we see manifested everywhere in nature. It really represents the earth and our existence here. So when you look at number 4, we have 4 seasons. So there is a winter, spring, summer, and fall. There are also 4 quarters of the day. There's morning, there's the first quarter, second quarter, third, and the fourth one. There are also 4 elements. There is earth, fire, air, and water. Also, there are 4 states. There are solids, liquids, there is gas, and there is ether. And there are 4 kingdoms. There is mineral kingdom, vegetable kingdom, animal kingdom, and human kingdom. So it's interesting to see that so many things in nature also come in 4th. Now, the more esoteric symbology is if we look at the man in its 4-fold form. And here we have our physical body. Again, it comes in 4. We have our etheric double. We have emotional body, and we have a mental body. And we already looked at it before in one of the talks, but number 4 is also represented in the Tetraktys of Pythagoras. And if you recall, Tetraktys of Pythagoras is a triangle with 1, 2, 3, 4 dots. So that's the Tetraktys of Pythagoras. And what is interesting here that, again, the triangle is the basic connection of the spiritual and physical. But no matter on which side of the triangle you are laid, so if you're on this side of the triangle, you have number 4 that represents also square and physical. If you turn the triangle to this side, you again have number 4. If you turn triangle to this side, you again have number 4. So no matter where you turn that triangle of laws and causes, they rest on the physical, in the physical world, square and the number 4. So it's quite interesting representation. Now, if we look at a few more representations of squares and where we've seen them, another one, if we look at the pyramids, like if you look at the Giza pyramid, it's not really a triangle. It is a triangle that sits on the square. It has 4 corners. So it's again yet another representation of the noumenal world resting on the physical world, because the pyramid is not built just in a flat triangle. It's resting on the 4 corners. So it's a very similar symbology between the Masonic apron, where we have a triangle inserted into the square. So where we have spiritual noumenal inserted into the physical. We have Tetraktys of Pythagoras, where basically all the physical exists within the noumenal world. And again, going back to our reading, I am in everything and everything is not in me. So it's the very difficult concept to understand that the first principle is permeating everything, but it's also a separate from everything. So here, all of the physical exists within the spiritual noumenal world. And the last one, the pyramid or pyramid of Giza with the Sphinx, that is also can be correlated with all of the strange flying creatures from the Revelations, it also rests, the triangle resting on the square. So we see in symbology of different traditions that the spiritual noumenal world does not exist on its own. Its own always rests on its manifestation in the physical reality. Now a little bit more about the letter 4. So what is interesting about letter 4? Actually, I'm going to ask everyone, what is your association with letter 4? What do you think is special about letter 4? To the student, it was quite interesting to find out what was special about it. It was so self-evident. It was almost like a black swan. Like, how could they not see it? Okay, anyone?
I was going to say the 4 directions that occurred to me, but you already mentioned that.
Okay, so we have 4 directions. 4. But a number itself.
It's almost a 4. The 4 is almost a square, but one leg is moved. But the number itself is like 2 squared. I mean, there's like mathematical.
It's sort of made up of 4 segments, 4 equal length segments as well.
Very true. Yeah, 4 squares. Yeah, it has 4 squares. So it's almost pictograph of the square if you just extend the 2 legs. The most profound thing that the student discovered about the 4, that it was the sort of first divisible number, that you can divide it, and it is like basically the division and multiplication of physical in the universe. Like 1 is 1. It's not divisible. 2 you can divide, but it divides to nothing. And 4 divides into 2, and it's sort of it's the division and multiplication, that it is a proliferation of physicality in continuity in the physical. That's how it was explained. That was quite interesting, because 6 is also divisible, but 4 comes before, and 2 is divisible, but it divides into basically 1 that we know is the first principle. So it doesn't divide into manifestation. So that was an interesting explanation of 4, that it basically represents the division of the first principle and multiplication of things in the physical realm. And 4 also represents a letter D. And I will come back to the letter D. So D is a 4th letter in Hebrew alphabet. And in Hebrew alphabet, it is Daleth. And in Greek alphabet, it is Delta. So 4D and square are holding the same symbology. And this is the English D. Actually, the Greek and Hebrew D, Greek D was like something like this. It's a triangle with like overextended 3rd leg. That's how it looks. So the letter D also represents, it's basically delta. It's where things split into 2 and divide. So it also represents division, nourishment, propagation, effusion. So it represents the physical world and multiplication in the physical world. Now going back to the very beginning of us starting to discuss of basically, do we want to consider the esoteric meaning and the depth of the square and the letter 4? Because again, it's not from the noumenal world of laws of causation, it's basically in a layman's terms, all the mess that we live in. And is it real? Because so often we are called to consider that this is not the real world. And I want to come back to our reading and examine it a little bit closer. So we had a reading today from Bhagavad Gita that said, all this universe is pervaded by me in invisible form. All things exist in me, but I do not exist in them. So it seems that the letters 4 and the letter 4 and square, our physical world, it is not really not real. It is a reflection of the real that exists and pervades all of the visible and invisible forms in this physical realm. So it is as real as the one who permeates it. So it is a reflection of that. But I do not exist in them. So he pervades it, but he does not actually exist in them. So that's why they are reflection. And to this student, this is one of the most difficult things to understand, how it pervades everything, but it is not existing in them. That it's literally, it casts its shadow, and the shadow seems to be real to us. We all exist in this shadow, but the first cause, first principle, all whoever is referred here, is basically saying, but I do not exist in them. I am separate from that. So then it says, nor are all things in me. Behold this, my divine mystery, myself causing things to exist and supporting them all, but dwelling not in them. So this is indeed the kingly mystery, that it does create all of these things of the square. All that we are, all where we enjoy, all that we hate, all the karmic causes that we endure, but it is not dwelling in them. It is separate from them. This is again going back to the saying that it is a reflection in a mirror. It's not a reality, but it's a reflection of the real. So we cannot treat it as not real, but at the same time, it is not real. Understand that all things are in me, even as the mighty air which passes everywhere is in space. So, and at the same thing, everything that happens in the physical world, in the world of the square, is happening in the noumenal world, within the first principle. O son of Kunti, at the end of a Kalpa, all things return unto my nature, and then again, at the beginning of another Kalpa, I cause them to evolve again. So here, he's basically saying, in a symbolical sense, that at the end of the Kalpa, this square of 4 corners of the east, west, north, south, of all the minerals of four kingdoms, all will, as he says here, they all will basically return into my nature. And his nature is, number 1, is the dot from where everything emanates. So it all somehow folds up into that dot. And this is what we see when I read the book of Revelations and Apocalypse. So why it is Apocalypse? It's the end of the physical. It's the end of the square world of the 4 corners of our physical existence. It is the end of the Kalpa, where everything will return into my nature. So here in the Bible, in probably one of the most mysterious parts of the New Testament, in the Revelations and Apocalypses, we're being told basically what is happening at the end of the Kalpa. What we also see in Bhagavad Gita, that all will return into into the dot of the first cause. And that's why it sounds so menacing, because this reality collapses, but this reality, as we've heard, is not real, is a reflection of this. And then what we read here, at the beginning of another Kalpa, I caused them to evolve again. And then it will be just yet another square, and all will begin again. Then it says, taking control of my own nature, I emanate again and again this whole assemblage of beings without their will by the power of the material essence. So, and in the footnote it says by the power of Prakriti. So, and it's interesting that it's noted that without their will, we do not have a will or decision or a choice to exist or not exist. We are part of all existence, part of all emanation from the one into the square. And these acts do not bind me, O conqueror of wealth, because I am as one who sits indifferent, uninterested in the whole works. And that's quite interesting, because it will be difficult for the law and causation to be interested in the outcome. Then it would not be law. A justice that is interested in the specific outcome would not be a justice. So this is why we're hearing here that basically the principle of all causation sits uninterested and indifferent in all of these works. It is just a principle of causation and the law for all manifestation. By reason of my supervision, nature produces the animate and inanimate universe. It is through this cause, O son of Kunti, that the universe revolves. So basically, at the end of this paragraph, he says that it is just a law that under supervision, this law exists, and the nature produces the animate and inanimate universes, and that's how it goes on, basically indefinitely. And what is so interesting that we see it in the symbology of, and I was just sort of doodling here on the board, but we can see clearly here is the one, the dot, that is being referred as emanating at the beginning of the Kalpa. This is the line, so this is one, this is the line, this is two. So this is the emanation of the all visible and invisible universes. And this is the 4. So this is a creation of physical reality of 4 corners. Or if you look at the loss of it at the end of the Kalpa of 4 beasts, also guarded by the 4 regions. So here are the 4 regions guarding each corner or each manifestation to basically align with the laws of the emanation of the one. And it is governed by the laws of the noumenal world, and that's we'll come back to the triangle in March, and that's the triangle that we also see on the Mason's apron. Now, this is the esoteric explanation of it, but now what do we do with this, and what does it mean for our lives, and how do we practically apply this in our lives? There is also a very beautiful reference to number 4 in St. John, in Revelations 21:16. He says here, and the city that lies on 4 squares. So he's referring to the New Jerusalem, to the city that will be built on the 4 squares. So we come back to the notion of New Jerusalem. So it's the city that is built on the 4 squares. And he is calling us to build this beautiful city that will lies on 4 squares. So this is us building a more ideal, more aligned with universal principles and laws, physical reality. That it may not be reflecting all the laws, and we may be here caught up in the throes of karma, and we may not be happy with what's happening to us individually, as a society, as a humanity. but we are here to evolve this into the New Jerusalem, into the utopia, or into the king, as it was called in the Bible, the kingdom of heaven that is here, that applies the laws and causations of the emanating from the spiritual world more perfectly in this physical reality. So if we look at our physicality and our square 4, it is something to celebrate. It is something that we only here have power to do, is to grow, to acquire new knowledge, new spiritual astuteness, and new skills. And what we see in different spiritual teachings, from Masons to the Christianity and to Pythagorean and Platonic teachings, that we are here to basically evolve this physical, maybe contorted, maybe not perfect world into the alignment with the emanating laws and the New Jerusalem, or kingdom of heaven. So I will stop here, and I know that was a lot about square and the number 4, but if there are any questions, we can now go to discussion now.
When you talk about the kingdom of heaven on earth, or the New Jerusalem, what's the timeline on that? I mean, is it something that's potentially manifest within this Kali Yuga, or are we really waiting for like a golden age before that can truly happen?
Well, the answer comes actually from the course I've taken on early Christianity, where actually this is the question, scholarly question, that scholars of Christianity study. There are 4 theories on this, and they're really important to understanding Christianity. That there is one that basically says it is now, that it is the kingdom of heaven is here now. It just depends on each one of us to see it or not see it. So it's, you may be in kingdom of heaven and the other person may not be, but it is here and now. Then there was a historical perspective, when we basically evolved socially, politically, and all of the war at the time of Christianity. It was when they would end the Roman occupation. That's when the kingdom of heaven will come. Then the third one was the next coming of Christ, that will come with the next coming of Christ. And what was interesting, that as Christianity evolved, it was postponed further and further because Christ was not coming. But I think esoterically and from Theosophical perspective, we are God. The kingdom of heaven is here. It's mostly us realizing this and basically embracing our higher self and living that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question. You often hear the phrase to square something. You know, does that mean to make it stable, put it in alignment, or to square oneself with an ideal? I was just wondering how that might relate to what you talked about.
It's interesting. I just thought of this. Yes, there is a word to square something or go to square one. What is interesting, that terminology exists only in English language, from the languages I know. It doesn't exist in other languages. But it also gives me a little bit insight, because English is the language of Masons. Masonry started in England, and the lots of terminology that would be connected with triangles and squares would enter the language through the Masonic tradition. I would think it is something connected to Masonry and English language, because it's quite interesting that we don't hear it in other languages, but Masons originated in England, so this was the Masonic organizations. The Masonic ideas were much earlier, but as a structure and the symbology, it was in English.
That's interesting that, just to continue with that, you probably came across this, but it just occurs to me the square is like, you know, there's like 4 points, so to speak, of the square.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if the cross came up at all, but if there's any relationship.
Cross came along, and I didn't mention it, but it's very, very interesting you're mentioning it. There we go. Trying to draw it. Yeah. So this is number 4. It was written in not in the ancient times. So it was not like this. It was written actually like this, like a triangle attached to. And it came up that basically it is a cross connected to physicality. That it has the cross with the leg that is forming a triangle. I did not study it in depth, but I saw a reference to it. The way it was, I'll draw it a little bigger so you could see. So that was number 4, and it was basically referring, that's how it was written by in the ancient civilizations, and the symbology of this was, it was the extended cross with the leg connecting it into the half triangle, so connecting it to the man and to the physicality. So interesting.
Thank you.
And I'm actually curious, maybe from Cyrus and Carolina, does square appears in other languages for you? Like, do you see like
No,
square?
not in Spanish.
No, yeah, same, not in Latvian, not in Russian.
Nope.
No. So we
I
were
think
right.
it's more in Latin, right? The
Yeah.
Quaternary.
Yeah.
I have a question. So I recall reading a while ago that a square also depicts the involution of divine into matter, and I'm not able to find that. Did you come across?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's the it was in this Mason's apron. So divine is the triangle. It's basically emanates into the physical.
Mm-hmm.
It's emanation of the spiritual world into the physical. That spiritual world is embedded in physicality. That we cannot say that spiritual world can exist without the physical. We are interconnected. That was quite interesting. I never looked into the Masonic aprons. That was interesting to understand the meaning.
I've heard this was represented also by the shape of Greek temples, where that's a triangle on top of a square, and even carries through to the sort of standard design for our houses today.
Very true. Very true. So because the house or the typical temple would have
it's like your Masonic apron drawing, only the triangle is flipped up. So it's like a triangle whose base forms the top of a square.
And for me, there's so much resembling the quaternary and the top triangle of the man's constitution, the lower quadrant and the higher triangle. It's very, very similar. It's like once we look into it, we see all of the parallels. So there was so much to discover about square and number 4.
Also, the pyramids are 4 triangles sitting on a square base, right? Did you come across any symbology of that?
Yeah. There was discussion of Pyramid of Giza and of the Sphinx. The Sphinx also was representing. Sphinx also is very much square. And that Pyramid of Giza was the place of mysteries for the Egyptians, and all the pyramids were built basically on the same pattern. It's the square and the triangle.
Mhm.
That the symbology was embedding the spiritual laws into the physical world. And if we look at the pharaohs, that's what their role was.
Mhm.
Whether those laws were spiritual or not, but they were embedding the laws in the physical society. And let me see if I came across any other symbols. I think I covered all of them. Yeah, the pyramids, the Sphinx. I did not see the temples, but so true as well, with the square and the triangle on the top. Because when you look at the temples from the different sides, there's always a triangle with some kind of a symbol on the like the roof triangle. Like basically all of our physical structures somehow consist of triangles. And it's interesting, as Josh noted, they don't exist in nature, but they exist in our structures.
Mhm.
Like something that we create with.
Yeah, they're always man-made, right?
Yeah, man-made. That we made everything into four. The elements, as I've read about them, the seasons, the hours of the day, the states, the kingdoms, we account everything in fours for some reason. It could be 5, but we did not divide something into fifths. It's 4.
Yeah, it seems like it's the basis, like you said, of the material world. And if we, I don't know, I just started thinking of like inductive and deductive reasoning, you know, we go from universals to particulars, but then from particulars back up to universals, and maybe it begins with a square here on Earth that we go back up to from materiality to universality. It has to be that strong, like structural base that you can build on.
Yeah. As you mentioned in the beginning, it's the stability of what is. To me, it was really fascinating to read the Revelations and Apocalypses, because before, when I would read it, it just was gibberish, some 4 beasts with strange faces, and the forces, this and that. And now that you understand, it's about physical reality collapsing. It makes much more sense. But before, it was literally just gibberish. It doesn't make any sense.
Right. Well, in all traditions, the manifested universe doesn't just pop into existence. It sort of has to be built up. And like in the Secret Doctrine, there's the hierarchies and so forth. In the Bible, it's like it only takes a few days, whatever that is. But it seems like, you know, first there was the waters, and then, you know, sky, mountains, and so forth. That there's like a procedural or sort of way to build the physical universe manifestation.
Anyone is familiar with the 4 regions, rulers of the corners? If anyone can add more on this, because it's very, very interesting. I'm just not familiar. Something to study.
Yeah.
They were lost. They were called the lords of karma. Devas. So something to look into.
So coming back to the Masonic apron, right? It represents the divine triad involuting into the lower quaternary. What happens once an individual is completely awakened? Does the quaternary go away, or does it still stay?
What it said in the Masonic tradition, it said that this is a sign of the true Master Mason. So Master Mason would be someone basically more enlightened than the others. I don't know, fully enlightened or an adept, but someone who is on a different stage. I have a feeling from this symbol that it is not about dropping the quadrant. It is it's basically, as we hear in Bhagavad Gita, that I permeate everything, but I'm not in it. That I am in this physical quadrant, but I'm not of it. I can watch it independently, all the passings and goings, and indifferently. So we discussed it when we were reading, I think, the way of Bodhisattva, that's what it is to be a Bodhisattva, that you don't need to be attached to anything. You can watch it coming and going, but you're still part of it. So that's the feeling I get. And in a symbol, it is interesting for me that in the apron, it does not sit on top like we have the nature of man. That it is basically sinking into the physical, and it is about being a master mason, is about embedding spiritual in your physical life. So maybe this is a thought came that the difference between this and this. So we have very similar symbols here. So the nature of man, when we die, this disappears. And that's sort of correct because the physical cannot exist in noumenal world. So it has to drop out. So this is our sort of eternal self. But the Masons are talking about basically advancing yourself and growing into the physical world. So this is while you're alive, you have the spiritual laws embedded in the physical, and you can manifest them in your life, that you're fully aligned. Whether our symbol of the nature of man is more explaining basically what is permanent, what is not permanent, what happens after death. That's the gist I get. If there's any other thoughts on this, would be quite interesting. There are probably many more things to this square. I just don't know. If we go into the geometry, in the more mystical geometry, there are probably many more interesting things. I'm just not familiar with the topic.
There's a fascinating, so I think it's Salvador Dali image of Christ merged with like an unfolded cube. It's very much based on squares, like a series of 6 squares that form the cross. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. So I'm not sure how that relates necessarily, but it's something about like it's like the incarnation of the Christ principle or something into matter. Was his symbolism behind it?
How interesting. I'm going to look at it. I sort of remember something. How interesting, huh?
Yeah, I'm sure I could find a reference.
Okay, if we don't have any more questions or discussions about the square and 4, we can take a break and come back to the reading.
Yeah, let's do that. We're going to pick up with the way of the Bodhisattva in about 10 minutes.
Sounds good.
Great. And if you can stop recording, Cyrus, I have one announcement.